Hey everybody, Pastor Scott here. I hope you're doing well, and I hope that you're staying healthy and being responsible with social distancing and all those kind of things. I'm sure you are. I'm sure mom and dad are keeping close tabs on you. And just wanted to follow up today on the video that you watched yesterday, if indeed you did watch it yesterday. And if you haven't, I hope that you will soon. But I did just want to follow up on some things that you would have talked about, or not talked about, but heard rather in the video, because there were a lot of challenging concepts that came up there. So I just wanted to cover some things with you here today. The video was just all about relationships, how to be in relationships with people, how to have good friends, how to be a good friend, and really some deep stuff. And I just wanted to spend a few minutes here with you talking about it. The beauty of a video like this is just that you can pause it anytime you want to, maybe to take some notes, or if you just want to get a little bit of a break from me, which I totally understand, you can do that. So just do that whenever you need to. But just to get into what I want to say to you today, to understand biblically what's happening with friendships and relationships, you have to start with understanding how the world is supposed to be. Or maybe to put it another way, for our purposes here, how relationships are supposed to be, what relationships are really supposed to look like. And I think that to understand that, we have to ask some hard questions. Who am I? This is all about identity. Who am I? And who are other people? Who are they truly in their being? Who am I in my being? And we know biblically that we're created in the image of God, which is why the first people who were created were made and created into community. Now, Adam was there first, of course, and Eve was made from him. But the fact that Adam is created in God's image is part of the reason why it's not good that he's alone, so God makes him a helper. So the first people are made in relationship with each other. They're supposed to be friends to each other. More than that, they're gonna be a married couple, and they're gonna make babies, and they're gonna create community. But we're seeing the importance of relationships from a very early stage, and they're supposed to help each other. When sin comes into the world, they start to blame each other. And then from that point on, people are offing each other left and right, based on if the other person is in their way or something like that. Cain kills Abel, more murder happening as the story goes on. And only when another person is helping another person get what they want, is humanity able to work together. And the example I'm thinking about here is the Tower of Babel, where you see people working together to try to make a name for themselves. So just humanity falls apart in humanity's relationships from a very early stage. Even after God called Israel and gave them all these great commandments and ways to live together with God and with one another, we know from things that David wrote in the Psalms, and also from the prophet Jeremiah, that they didn't know how to do relationships well. They lied to each other. They would talk to each other like they were good neighbors, but they wouldn't treat each other well. They would be lying, they'd be gossiping, things like this. Just humanity is just not in a good place when even the people of God don't know how to treat each other the way that they're supposed to. So when Jesus comes into the world, he reiterates some things that God had said through the prophets in the time of Israel, but he also clarifies some things and adds some things. So he describes what relationships are supposed to look like, because ultimately this is what he's about. He's all about bringing people into relationship with him, and then creating community based on people's relationship with him. That's what the church is a community of people who have a mutual relationship with Jesus. And because they have that in common, they can then have a special relationship together, which is why Jesus said, "This is how the world will know that you're my disciples, by your love for one another." It'll be just a different kind of love than the world knows, and that the world has ever seen before. It'll be a love that they long for. That's what's going to be attractive about you. But ultimately, it's going to be different to them, because it is different. It's a redeemed love based on my love for you and your mutual love for me. So he says when he's in the world, Jesus, and he's telling people how to be in relationship with each other, that you are to love your neighbor as yourself. Think of your neighbor as just as important as yourself. Put it another way, he said that you are to treat one another how you would want them to treat you. So, how would you like a person to treat you? Treat them that way. Put yourself in their shoes um, when you're maybe judging or something like that, considering or discerning something that somebody else has done. Put yourself in their shoes and really just kind of um, have this kind of slowness to judge, I guess we could say, and be slow to speak, quick to listen, think, before you speak. Things like these. These are all principles that Jesus wanted to make clear in how we treat one another in his teaching. Elsewhere in the New Testament, we find the command to honor one another. Jesus, again, I've already said it, it says not to judge. The point isn't, that we turn our brains off or that we just stop caring about what's right or wrong. That's not what he means by that. But his point is that we don't see people's hearts. We don't know people's motives. So we shouldn't act like we do. And would we want people to assume things about us without really knowing it about us? Of course not. So because of that, we shouldn't be that way with other people. And so my point is, everything Jesus says about how we treat one another, this is how the world is supposed to operate. And when it does, we care about each other more than we care about ourselves. And that gives others the room to flourish, to find happiness, and to have joy. And then when they're doing that to us, it then helps us to become who we're supposed to be. And we can just be free to live our lives how the Lord has made us to. Sean, in the video, in talking about how to build relationships, he gave 4 practical steps. Let me just go through these quickly. Be honest with yourself. What are your hang-ups, social hang-ups, things you struggle with, things like that. Be honest with yourself. Set realistic expectations for different people who you're going to be friends with. Maybe you're going to have certain friends that you hang out with, certain other friends maybe that you just text with sometimes. That's okay. That doesn't mean that you're better friends with one or another, or it doesn't mean that you love one person more than you do the other. Just sometimes relationships take on different forms. Thirdly, he says, be a good friend. So don't only look for people who would be good friends to you, but also be a good friend yourself. And then fourthly, pray. Pray and ask God. So keep those 4 things in mind moving forward here. I want to just talk quickly here, and I'm already at 7:45 here on the video, so I want to be done by 10 minutes. So bear with me here. One thing that I wanted to draw attention to was something Michael was talking about in the video, about being told because of just kind of his personality that he was gay. So therefore he thought that he was. And I found that fascinating, that he was led to think a certain thing about himself just simply because other people were saying it about him. It's just fascinating to me that the world was really telling him how to think, and because he wasn't confident, he buys into it. And only when he confessed that homosexuality was a struggle for him did he begin healing. This is just the effect that the world can have on us without us realizing it. We could be learning how to think because of how the world is telling us to, if we don't really have a solid scriptural, gospel-centered, God-centered foundation of things. Just want to read this quote to you from a book I'm reading right now for my own personal studies. This quote: "The doctrines we hold," that is, the things we believe, "the doctrines we hold, be they philosophical, political, or theological, feel right or wrong, plausible or implausible, based largely on how well they accord with the prevailing social, imaginary, or world picture." Let me break that down. He's saying that a lot of times we get our beliefs based on what feels right or wrong, and that is based on largely what the world is telling us how to think. So things feel right or wrong based on what we're hearing elsewhere, and then if something, how something feels then determines how we think about things. And we have to be careful with that. We've got to make sure that we're letting the Lord himself filter how we think about things and not just let the world tell us how to think. So we have to learn to see things like God sees things. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, Romans 12. Colossians 3, as Sean talked about in the video, set your mind on things that are above where Christ is. And I know I'm at 10 minutes here, but just bear with me. I want to say one more thing. And it was about Sarah Kelly, the singer, at the end of the video. You've probably never heard of her before. Frankly, I never heard of her before either, and I'm a lot older than you. But apparently she's a well-known singer, and maybe not well-known now, but was probably 10 years ago or so. But she talked about growing up and not having any confidence, being picked on, and then having suicidal thoughts because of the being picked on. And it's interesting to me how she then said she thinks suicide is selfish. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it was a low self-image that was leading her to have the suicidal thoughts, and then now she's looking back and is saying, I think that was selfish to think that way. And I found that interesting. I wouldn't say suicide is selfish. I think I would say that it's self-centered. Selfishness is when we do certain things for what it's going to give us without any concern for other people. And when you're suicidal, you're not trying to get anything. You're trying to end the suffering. But self-centeredness is a mindset where we're only thinking in terms of like us at the middle of a solar system, and everything in the world revolves around us. And I really think that's what drives a lot of suicidal thoughts. We don't believe that God can bring us out of whatever hard chapter in life that we're in. And that's just not true. He can bring us out. That's why she said in the video, you need to be a little patient with yourself and with the Lord. And I just think that's absolutely true. And confession, here in my depressed times, when in my college days, I went through a really hard time of depression when I was a college student. I had suicidal thoughts. To some degree or another back then. And looking back on it now, I don't think I was selfish. I think that I was thinking sort of self-centered. I was sort of the middle of the universe in my mind, and everything revolved around me. So why aren't things happening the way I want them to? And the scripture teaches us to think with Jesus at the middle of everything, and how I'm created for him and to enjoy a relationship with him, and to then reflect his goodness to other people. When I learn to think like that, that helps me to just take a breath, get the pressure off of myself to be perfect, and instead learn to love other people the way that I'm supposed to, because I know that Jesus loves me first, and I know who my identity is. That's why Sarah said in the end of the video, hanging out with God will begin to heal you. Just spending time with God, hanging out with him, being patient, that'll begin to heal you. So I know I went over time. Thanks for your patience with me. I'm going to end the video here, answer the questions, and try to get your assignments done on time. Go back through all the assignments that you've had and make sure that you have them turned in, because I'm going to have to start giving zeros on some of the things that you've not turned in. So just really think about some of these things. And I'll stop there. All right, take care. Lord bless.